Hello, I'm David. Welcome back to Alders Classics. Today we're talking about XJS's, and we're going to take a look at some cars before and after they've been restored. This is a very early XJS dating back from 1976. We've had to break this car. This car really is beyond economical repair. It's just simply too rusty and in too poor condition to try and retrieve it, but it has been incredibly useful for repairing other cars. We've taken lots and lots of spare parts off this one, but it's quite useful as a kind of introduction and also a buyer's guide, because you can very easily see all the faults on this car. These early XJS's, in fact all XJS's, can have some very serious rust problems. As you can see, that front bumper beam is completely rotted, and as we look around the engine bay, there are areas which are normally hidden by the engine and ancillary stuff in the engine bay. These areas here tend to rust very, very badly, so that's something to look out for if you're buying a used car. Other areas to watch out for in terms of the rust are the floors, especially the front floors, because what happens often, the windscreen leaks and the water drips down the dashboard behind the back of the dash and collects here in the footwell. So these areas are often very rusty and have quite big holes in some cases. We don't have an XJS Cabriolet here today to show you, but the Cabriolet has basically a soft top at the rear and two separate removable Targa panels at the front, and then there's a T-bar in the centre, and very often the rear hood develops a leak, it splits, and then the water drops down and it collects just along this line here in front of the rear floor, and it can rot so badly that this can actually break away. Other favourite rust spots on the XJS are the sills. This particular car, they aren't too bad, but they do very often rot, especially towards the bottom of the sill. Coming back, you've got rear quarters. They can rust. Again, this one isn't too bad, but you can see, as you can see, the arches have gone big time on this car. Serious problems, and that's why it had like chrome covers, just to disguise the fact that they were all rotting away. It's a very late 3.6 engine auto. It's actually, I think it's March 1991, so it's actually a very late pre-facelift model. So it's got the old type chrome bumpers, which we like, and yeah, it's going to be a very nice car one day. Now we're going to have a look round the engine bay on this 3.6. Generally it's quite clean in here. It's not spotless, but it's not bad. I was talking about the serious rust problems around the suspension points on the earlier car, but in that respect this one's actually very good. There isn't any rust around those suspension turrets. We've seen quite a few head gasket issues on 3.6s, and some of them burn a bit of oil. They do have a bit of a tendency to overheat. People don't maintain the radiators very well, they start leaking, and then lo and behold you've got a head gasket gone. Also the viscous fans can break. They crack around the edges. I mean, they're quite nicely made, they're very thick, but still they do crack, and then blades sometimes break off as a result, or sometimes they can collide with the cowling, and that can all make quite a mess. Numerous electrical problems, ECU problems, as you expect with cars of this sort of vintage, but generally it's quite a reliable unit, and probably more so than the V12 overall. looking around at the front of the car, this is all very nice indeed. Quite often you see rot round the headlights. The headlight comes out and lo and behold, all the panel work at the back can have quite a lot of rust issues. The oil coolers are actually very nice on this one, and even the aircon rad in nice condition. So pretty good car. Slam panel has got a fair bit of rust, but we'll take that off. We've got a sandblasting container over the road. We'll get that blasted and then we'll get that refinished, and that'll look like new before we put it on the market. The 89 onwards cars are distinguished by the very nice Recaro seats. You can see these have a nice chunky side bolster, so they're actually much more comfortable and supportive than the earlier seat. This is just basically a mule seat. We've actually got a nice interior for this car, but once all the mucky jobs are out of the way, we'll start thinking about putting that back in at that stage. We've had all the bumpers re-chromed for this as well, so all the chrome work's going to look very, very nice, and it should be a fantastic car by the time it goes back on the road. This is a customer's car. We've been working on this one for a few years now, and this is actually a very rusty car, but it's a very particular model because it's a Saint era car, which refers to the 76 to 79 period pre-HE car, which was used by Roger Moore in the series, in the Ian Ogilvy, and it's quite distinctive. It's Old English white with a black leather interior, which is a great colour coordination. Part of the reason it's taken so long, we've had to source things like brand new door handles and new mirrors, new rubbers, lots of parts under the bonnet, which were very, very hard to find. Jaguar stopped making these parts many, many years ago, so we've had to source things on the aftermarket, and it's taken us a long time. The wheels are also very distinct on the early cars. These are actually called Kent alloys. They're actually a beautiful wheel, but they're quite soft and they're very prone to warping, so the customer had to buy quite a few sets of wheels to find one good enough set to refurbish. These early cars, sometimes I call them Saint cars, but really they're known as the pre-HE or high efficiency car, had quite a heavy rubber bumper arrangement, as you can see. Two sections. These were built really for compliancy in the American market, who had very strict crash regulations back in the 1970s and still do today. Being a pre-HE car, or highly expensive as I sometimes call it, this car had early fuel injections, basically the E-type engine with fuel injection added to it. Later, I think it was a guy called Peter May, a Swiss engineer, who redesigned the cylinder heads for this engine and made it much more fuel efficient. This is an early engine, and as you can see, it's all been immaculately rebuilt, and all the ancillaries on this car are brand new. All the air conditioning, alternator, air filters, radiator, virtually everything you can see on this car has been replaced. Even things like the servo, brake master cylinder, the brake reservoir, all the pipe work, absolutely tons and tons of stuff, all brand spanking new, which has been very, very hard to find. When we talk about brand new parts, what we really mean is new old stock. It's stuff that's been sat in boxes for decades, but never actually used on a vehicle previously. And some of those things extend to the interior, like the internal door handles we managed to source. We had to get these bezels here re-chromed. They're for the mirror adjusters, and they look very nice. That was all done by Castle Chrome. Great job by them. Ironically, the early cars, such as this one, are more modern on the interior than the later cars. What I mean by that is the fact that this has got an aluminium panel rather than wood. The HE cars and also the facelift cars had lots of wood on the door cappings all around the instrumentation and the switch gear, but the early XJS has aluminium switches, which makes it quite distinctive, and it's one of the reasons why people collect this early model. We've attempted to rejuvenate a lot of the plastics in this car, which were very faded and discoloured. We've used various products, ceramic coatings. I intend to do a separate video on those later on, but we're quite happy with the results. We haven't really finished yet, we're still building up, but we're trying to get the original colour and shine back on the plastic. But it's kind of getting there, and we think eventually it should look quite authentic. We did ask the customer whether we should try and rectify the poor alignment on the glove box lid, because as you can see the chrome doesn't run through straight. But ironically then he brought a video into us showing us a clip from the Saint series, where in fact all the early cars had this exact same discrepancy. So he said, no, I'd rather leave that as it is, thank you very much. Before we move on to the next car, I think you'll rather enjoy the delightful sound that the engine makes on this particular car, which was sent off to a very well-known exhaust manufacturer who's made an absolutely first-class job of making a beautiful exhaust system for this car. We've been working our way through the years on the XJS models, and this is pretty much the end of the line. This is actually a 1996 car. This is when Ford owned Jaguar outright, and there's lots of Ford parts on these later cars, which are generally known as facelift cars for obvious reasons. This is the last run-out model of the facelift. It's actually called the Celebration model. I think it's to celebrate 20 years of the XJS. Because this Celebration is also a convertible model, it's got this large diagonal cross brace at the back of the car. This is to stiffen up the suspension and stop the car wandering at speed. There's a very similar contraption on early cabriolet models, which was the first incarnation of the convertible. There is a company called, I think it's Harvey Bailey, that make what they call an anti-tramp frame, which is a similar kind of device, which you can fit onto coupe models rather than the convertibles. Also at the back of the car, you have to think about the rear differential. They're very prone to leaking. This one's actually bone dry, so this is the exception to the rule. Later cars like this one have what are called outboard brakes. The early cars have inboard brakes, which, as the name suggests, means that the discs and the calipers were much closer in to where the diff is, and that led to a lot of problems with everything all overheating, and also major accessibility problems as well. Further along the chassis, we've got the mounting here for the radius arm, and these bushes do perish quite regularly. Another thing to look out for on all XJSs is the gearbox mount. These wear out quite routinely. Some have kits available to rebuild them. At the front of the car there's a few things to talk about. Again, we've got this diagonal cross brace at the front, which the cabriolet model didn't have. Wheel bearings are a bit of a weak spot, particularly the rear ones. That can be quite a big job. They can be adjusted, but not in all cases. Drop links wear out quite rapidly. Steering racks, they can have numerous leaks, and we normally send those away to a specialist because it's quite a big job actually to strip and rebuild those. Well, that concludes our brief talk about XJSs for today. I hope that you enjoyed the video, and please like and subscribe. Look forward to seeing you on the next one. Thank you very much.